Welcome to episode 47 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre, featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, stage managers, producers, and more. If you'd like to be a guest on Stageworthy or just want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like the podcast, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Sandi Becker is a stage manager currently with Eldritch Theatre's The Harrowing of Brimstone, McReedy, playing at the Red Sandcastle in Toronto starting October 27th. Sandi, you're a stage manager. I don't get to talk to stage managers very much.
I don't get to talk to interviewers very much.
Most stage managers are, well, first off, people don't usually say, when they are approaching a production, they don't usually say, I want to talk to your stage manager. And also, most stage managers are not particularly comfortable with talking.
Fair enough. I'm very comfortable talking. Mm-hmm. I probably will not listen to this podcast because the sound of my own voice recorded makes me crazy. But
see, I have it's hard for me. I have to listen to a lot of my own voice, and I also, the sound of my own voice makes me crazy. So I don't know. This is a great way to start. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I hope my voice is not annoying to you as it is to me. Have you all, when did stage management start to be a thing for you?
I fell into it, as most people that I know who are stage managers did, although I'm encountering more and more people who set out to be stage managers, which I think is awesome. I sang all through school, and I wanted to be a performer, and I went to York to try and be an actor, and didn't get into the acting stream. You have to re-audition after first year at York, so I didn't get into the acting stream, and it didn't occur to me. Production didn't even enter my mind at the time. So I just have I have a theater history degree, and then there was a community theater thing at York, and I auditioned for a show, and they said, "Well, I have a part for you, but we need a stage manager." And I went, "Sure, what's that?" Had no idea what it was. Had, no concept of what a stage manager did at that point, really. Did it once, trial by fire. It was terrifying, a nightmare, and by the end of it, I was like, "Hey, I'm good at this," and I won't ever not get hired because I'm too tall. I won't ever have any, so much less stress around finding work, around that aspect of my life, and I still get to tell stories. I still get to be part of the whole thing, and I'm better at it, and there's more work. And so
it's interesting because people will always need a stage. There's always a need for good stage managers.
Yeah, and all I have to do to get work is show up and be good at my job, and I'll get hired back. Yeah. Whereas, an actor could be fantastic, and the next time around, there's not something that fits them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Also, the downside of being an actor is that there are actually thousands of other people who can do exactly what you do.
Another good point.
There are a handful of people who can do what a good stage manager can do.
True.
So you went into York thinking you were going to do musical theater.
Well, I went into York. This is not a good advertisement for York, but I went to York because it was the only place I got in. I did want to go into musical theater, so I had auditioned at Sheridan and Windsor and all the places, and York doesn't have a musical theater program. And in fact, while I was there, I don't know if it's changed since, but while I was there, they were very down on musicals. They really didn't like musicals at all. They considered it a lesser art form.
That, to me, I don't know what that, I have no idea what it's like now. I know some people who are recent graduates, so I'll have to ask them. But when I was at George Brown, even though we were supposed to be classically trained, it was important that we learned how to sing, because one of the things that they told us, it was not that it was a lesser thing, this is going to be part of your career.
Yeah.
If you want a career in the theater,
you
would better be able to carry a tune, you would better be able to put together a combination, you would better be able to do Shakespeare.
Yeah.
These were the things that they basically
and they did teach the acting students at York how to sing. I know they had a singing teacher, but I'm not sure what went on in those rooms because I didn't get to the point where I had a singing teacher. But I'm not sure. But my experience there was that unless it was, I think they did one like one musical for
It's
the
always
entire
Brecht or
4 years,
something.
and it was Brecht.
Of course it was Brecht, because Brecht is the serious
Yeah.
musical. See, this conversation is going to ramble a lot,
Of course.
so I don't have set questions, so it's a
Great.
conversation. For me, when I was way back in the dark ages, when I was this is when I start to act like I'm older than I am. So I'll just pretend that.
I do that too.
I know, suddenly I was way back in the 80s, when I was thinking about going to school, which sounds like a long time to some people now. One of the schools that I didn't look at was York. And the reason why I didn't look at York was the whole idea of you're going to audition, you're going to get into the program, and then once you've done your first year, they will decide what you're going to do, like what you are able to do. And my whole thing was, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want to do. So I didn't want to go to a school that was not going to let me at least do what I wanted to do and fail at it, and like not let me get to that point.
Yeah.
Which I felt like that was a demoralizing way to do it. Did you see any kind of merit in doing it like that?
The merit I do see, and I think that you can have it both ways, I think, because the merit that I did see was that everybody in first year did everything. Okay. And I think that's really important. I think that actors should have some experience in production. I think production people should have to take an acting class. I think that's really, really valuable. So there's like starting off broad and streamlining down, I think is a really great thing to do. That being said, it did, and I know some people who, well, like I remember being 19 and finding out that I didn't get into acting and being just devastated. Like it's the worst thing that could ever happen to a person. As it turns out, I'm so glad I didn't. But like, you know, so yeah, yes and no. Like, I also think it's a real world experience. To be one of 216 get accepted, that's the audition process.
Well, so
there's that too. But when you've paid and you're paying for a safe space to learn, that's not super helpful.
That is not super helpful. And you know, in a certain way, you did already like. So the only school that I can really compare it to is the school I went to, which was George Brown, which took in 30. Yeah. So hundreds auditioned, 30 got in, and even they considered that too many, because ideally by the end of third year, they wanted to be down to between 15 and 12 people.
And how did they do that? Did they fail people? Did they ask them to leave?
They don't fail people. They ask people to leave.
Yeah.
So that in your first, and it usually happens either right before Christmas and right before the summer. So if it happens right before Christmas, shitty way to spend your Christmas holiday.
Yeah.
But it tended to be, so you've had some time and it's all about, you know, the first semester's exploring and this sort of thing, and then they try to figure out, so who is taking to the program and who's not, and who's resisting and this sort of thing. And those might be the people that they ask to leave after a semester. They usually give, like, that first time is kind of a blindside if they ask you to leave, because you haven't had any previous meetings that gave you any warning. After that, you know, maybe you were on the edge from that first one, and then, you know, but generally, yes, they go through that painful process of asking people to leave. But they learned early on, after a painful, this is a story that they told, is that they used to joke that, you know, we're going to give everybody A's, because what's the difference between an A actor and an A minus actor and a B actor? So everybody gets A's. And then they asked somebody to leave. And that person said, I'm not leaving, I've got A's. And they said, well, you're going to have to leave. So they sued and said, my marks say that I can stay. And so then they gave everybody a C. So then everybody got a C in their classes. And it never. So the description became what was important, not the thing. The only time I got an A was in my third year performance of A Winter's Tale, when the late Douglas Campbell, who was directing us, was asked, so what should the grades be? And he said, well, they did it, didn't they? They get A's. It's the only A I ever got. But in terms of like going from thinking you were going to go in to do musical theater and to be told no, you're not getting into that stream.
Yeah.
Did they suggest production, or did you choose production?
No, I didn't. That's the thing is, I went to the default at York is theatre studies. Sort of that's more academic side. It's sort of, and when certainly at the time when I was 19 and didn't know any better, it felt like, well, you can't be an actor, so you're going to be a critic. That's that's really what it feels like when you get that. We're going to teach you how to be a critic.
That knife just twisted. Because that's the whole, like, you know, that perpetuates that whole critics are failed actors
Yeah,
thing,
exactly.
What it is.
So I pride myself, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I know I'm one of the very few graduates of York with a theatre studies degree who did not take a single criticism class. I took all the history classes, I took all the requirements. I didn't take any criticism classes because I said I'm not going to be a critic. If I'm not going to be an actor, that's fine, but I'll be something else.
Did you have an eye towards what you, or were you just like trying to take in as much as you could to try to figure out?
Well, that's the thing is that once you have the freedom of the theater studies umbrella, I could take whatever I wanted. I took German classes. I took Russian history classes. I took all kinds of stuff that had nothing to do with theater, and it was probably that's why my education was so rich, and I really enjoyed my experience at York because I was able to keep it that broad.
Yeah.
And it was this other like little. They're called Vanier College Productions. It's this little like community theater linked to one of the colleges that has nothing to do with the theater department.
Right.
And it was through them that I found stage management, that I figured out that production was fun and interesting and something I was interested in doing.
And I don't know, did you mention what that first show that you stage managed was?
The very first show I stage managed was Into the Woods.
Sure, let's start with something easy then.
I also played the giant because the giant is just a voice, so I could do that. And so that, which is my absolute favorite credit of all time. Still, it's said in the program with no punctuation. Sandi Becker, giant stage manager. It's my favorite thing that I've ever had. I kept the program. I love it so much. And so that was my first experience at stage management.
So
maybe I ASM'd the Fantastics before that. Maybe. I can't remember what order it came in. But
still, I mean, the first one to stage, like, you know, if it was going to be me, give me a nice two-hand to stage manage first, just to get my feet wet. But you jumped into a very complicated show.
Well, because I didn't know what I was getting into.
That's probably how we got you to do it. If you don't know what you got to do, and that must have been terrifying when you realized exactly what it was that meant.
Mostly, it was the schedule that made me have brain hemorrhages. I didn't, because it was also extracurricular, so it was scheduling around everyone's classes. I'm not available for this day. I'm not available for this day. I don't think we ever had the whole cast in the same room before the dress rehearsal ever. So it was I do remember sitting in my residence room crying because I couldn't figure out how to make this work. And, so once the like the calling of cues and the running of the show, I don't remember being particularly scary. I've never really been intimidated by a scary call. It's all the administrative stuff beforehand that sort of I find stressful.
See, because to me, there are some supremely technical shows. I don't know what that production looked like.
It was, sliding tracks.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't
like
fancy.
No, but then, once you get into some of the larger shows and you think about how to make those work and all of the moving pieces, like musicals are complicated.
Yep.
Musicals are complicated because they have sound, they have music, they have lights, they have so many people.
Yes. Or a few people playing 6 million different people, which is
that's another
huge challenge in and of itself. Yep.
And so in some of those things that's like a terrifying thing. But how big was the cast that you were trying to schedule at that point?
Oh God, Into the Woods isn't huge comparatively, is it? I want to say 15, maybe something like that.
On the large side for Into the Woods, maybe. But
maybe I don't. Yeah, it's a long time ago. I don't really remember.
Yeah, no, it's not. My gut was like 12.
Maybe,
but still,
could be,
I mean, that's
right.
When everybody's in school and you have to try to work that out, that's still a lot.
Yeah, and it had to be under a certain number because I remember one of my apprenticeships doing Les Mis and the cast was 20. I'm thinking that was enormous. So it mustn't have been too huge.
But you came out of that unscathed and decided it was a thing you wanted to do.
I guess so, and I don't really remember where the decision happened, because I still, when I graduated, I still sent out headshots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still was thinking, oh, I'll give this a go, but I was a bit silly about it and a bit naive, I think. I sent out a bunch of headshots and also a production resume to the same theater, going, I could do this, or I could do this.
Well, you know,
and so
here's the thing is that you might have actually fallen into that, because I know people who are fine actors, but they also happen to be good stage managers, and they won't tell anybody that.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as a theater finds out that you're a good stage manager, they don't care if you can act. They want the stage manager.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you were to go to them and say, I can do production, I can do acting, they don't care about your acting. They're like, I need good production people.
Exactly.
So what did your stage management career look like after school?
Well, my first summer after school, I got hired at Port Stanley, and they hired me. They hired me to be ASM / props and wardrobe coordinator. So I was supposed to be just in charge of maintenance and stuff like that. They were bringing in a bunch of shows from another theater, and the theater lost all their props. So when I arrived, they told me, you have to build this show.
Oh!
So I built Forever Plaid, and thank God the director went, well, I want it to look like these guys made it themselves, so I want all the props to look really crappy and homemade. I was like, awesome, I can totally do that. So I made a lot of really bad, ugly props, and then I did some shopping for the rest of the season, but it was mostly, and I ASM'd all the shows just sort of as an extra. But it really felt like ASMing was the side gig.
Right.
Like, this was, props is the big thing, and then you ASM and do some laundry here and there. But like, yeah, so I did that, and I didn't start, because that was before Port Stanley was an equity company, and I didn't start apprenticing for a really long time, because I didn't have any training. I felt like I was like, somebody, and I think it was, the advice was directed to the actors in school, but somebody in school said, don't take your equity card too soon, because then you won't get work, blah, blah, blah. And I don't feel that applies to stage managers quite as much.
I think that doesn't apply to stage managers
but I took it to heart big time.
Because
so
it's all you knew. And you know what? The person saying it probably only knew from the actor point.
So I did a lot of unpaid, fringy stuff that was, and, did... I don't know how many years it was before I got my first equity credit, and it was actually, and then I started collecting credits here and there, but as an apprentice you can sort of get credits for as long as you want without taking your card, and so I was dabbling in equity, I was dabbling in getting apprenticeship credits, and then I was the conference assistant at the SM Arts conference when Winston Morgan was still running it. I think it might have been his last year, and he... Like I just did his photocopying and set up the room, and as a result, I got to attend all the conference for free, which was great. And I learned tons. And then at the end of it, Winston took me out for a drink to thank me for my work, and yelled at me and said, "You're doing this wrong. Like, you're good at do you want to do this? Are you good at this? Then why don't you have your card yet? What are you doing? You're dicking around. You're wasting your time. You're wasting other people's time. Get on this." And I went home and I cried, and I was so upset because Winston Morgan had yelled at me. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, no, he was right. He was absolutely right. So then I started doing it in earnest. So I got my card. When did I get my equity card? 2006, 2007, something like that. And 2 years later, I managed to quit my day job at the bookstore.
Hey.
So that was cool.
Whenever you can go and quit your day job to do the thing, the capital T thing, that's a great moment.
Yeah. Oh, that was the best moment ever. I remember sending my mom an email saying, like, it's in my printer. I printed out my letter of resignation. I'm dropping it off tomorrow. I'm out of the bookstore specifically because of
How did your mother react to that?
Oh, she was so excited for me.
Was she? Okay.
Yeah.
You had the kind of parent that was like, a life in theater is not the end of the world for my child, or
my parents both were very, very supportive the whole time. My mom never really figured out what she wanted to do when she grew up, so I think that she sort of was just excited that I knew that I had a plan and that I was, doing something that I enjoyed, and she was really, really happy for me in that respect. And my dad still is just, he was an urban planner by trade, and so that's a fairly artistic profession already, and he also is a photographer and used to do these gorgeous pencil drawings and stuff like that. So he has a very artistic bent. So I think he understands the drive to do it, and so he's supportive. They both have been financially supportive. Just like really, like I think I would have quit long ago if my parents hadn't been supportive about it.
I think it's interesting to think about, because I know for several generations, our parents, the concept of parent, when they would grow up and they would hit 20, they would have to decide on a career right then, and getting into that. And it was expected that that's the career you would stay in for the rest of your life, and you would do that. And your reward for being in something that you may eventually hate was that at the age of 60, you could retire and then start doing the things that you like.
Yeah.
And I think that as time has progressed, that's become a less attractive thing. It's now a little more acceptable to be able to switch jobs, switch careers, and make changes as you need to. It's not the end of the world like it once was. And so now it's good to see, I think I hear more stories about people whose parents were like, if this is the thing you love, then do it.
Yeah.
And I hear that more than I hear, my parents disowned me when I said I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of a first-generation Canadian thing. Like, I think that, if your parents are immigrants, that's probably a little scarier.
I think immigrants, and also depending on how old your parents are when you went into the business.
Yeah.
And there are people who may have gone into the business around the time that I graduated, or who went to theater school, and their parents were like, if you do this, you do this on your own, sort of thing, rather than with our support.
Yeah.
So after that,
and to be fair, I think it also helps that my older sister is a doctor, so
well,
they sort of went like, she'll be okay because after we're gone, her sister will take care of her. A little bit.
You had a doctor in the family.
Exactly.
You were okay.
They have one successful daughter. That's
the important thing is that you both enjoy what you do.
Totally.
When did you link up with Eldritch Theatre?
When did I link up with Eldritch Theatre? 2 years ago. So, yeah. And I already knew Eric, but I had not even seen any of his shows. I don't think. I've been on one tour with him. He was hired as an actor on this kids puppet show about a Christmas turkey. We toured it all over Southern Ontario, and I knew I enjoyed working with him, and I really liked him as a person. And then I am very good friends with Eric's longtime designer, Melanie McNeil, and she, I think, pushed for me to come in and join the Eldritch family. I think she wanted to have me around. I'm not sure what happened to. I'm not sure what happened with the stage manager prior to me. I don't think there was a falling out. I think everybody's happy and everybody likes each other. I think maybe she stopped stage managing, or she moved on to something
or maybe she went on
bigger.
to something else.
I don't know. But anyway, so but he was looking for a stage manager, and Melanie said, I have this friend. And he went, I know that friend. So
in terms of what Eldritch Theatre does, now Adriana Prosser is somebody that's a friend of mine. She's been on the podcast before, and she describes. She's the marketing monster for Eldritch Theatre. She described to me what Eldritch Theatre did as magic horror puppet theater.
Sounds like an apt description to me.
So, since I heard that phrase, I've been trying to figure out what is magic horror puppet theater. Now, I'm sure that your answer is going to be you'll have to see it to figure it out.
Kind of,
but aside from that, can you give me some kind of idea of what magic horror puppet theater is?
Magic horror puppet theater is... I was actually talking to somebody who was a prospective volunteer for us this year and trying to sort of explain the same concept, because it's comedy, but it's comedy out of trying to be very, very frightening. It's creepy and hilarious, and it's also there's puppets, and they're telling horror stories and doing magic tricks.
Okay.
So that's really like the nuts and bolts of it.
The puppets are doing magic tricks?
I don't think. No, Eric does the magic tricks with his hands, but I wait. Nope. I did Frankenstein's boy. A puppet did do a magic trick, so that is something that happens on occasion. I'm not sure if it'll happen in this show. I don't think the puppets in this show are quite as dexterous as the puppets in the other shows. So.
What is unique about stage managing an Eldritch Theatre show that is different from another show?
I think I certainly laugh more in rehearsal. I certainly enjoy rehearsals more. What is unique about it? Everything. It's a completely different beast. Well, it's part of it is not so much Eldritch, and part of it is the space we work in. We work at the Red Sandcastle Theatre, so it's very, very... his shows require a very specific technical elements in a space that is not equipped to provide them.
Okay.
So there's that.
So I've worked at the Red Sandcastle. I love the Red Sandcastle.
Oh, me too.
Space.
Me too.
The as a necessity, its technical specifications are quite sparse. So when a show requires things that the theater doesn't have, what do you do?
Well, you get creative, and luckily I'm not on the design team, so I don't have to actually come up with the solutions usually. But I remember on Frankenstein's Boy, which was the show we did 2 years ago, we had a couple of things that we really wanted, that I don't even remember who really wanted it to happen, whether it was Eric or Marjorie Chan, our director. But we wanted an orphanage to light on fire. And I was like, that could either be something really, that could either require projection, or we could cut out a little house of foam core board and put cloth flames behind it attached to a fan, so we turned the fan on and they showed up, and so that's of course what we did. And that show needed a lot of there was a can't give away magic tricks. There was a box that required a very specific lighting effect. Which was just a matter of finagling focus for a long time and figuring out what was.
Is doing a theater show that has magic elements in it difficult to stage manage? Because magic requires a certain amount of misdirection, which means that everything involved on the stage has to help with that misdirection.
Well, it's just putting the thought into it, and that's the thing, is because Eric is a magician, he knows what is required to make the trick work. And so that's even like, he'll educate his directors on that. He'll say, well, I understand that you want the story to work this way, but for the trick to work, these are the specific things that have to happen. And he's, obviously I'm in on all the magic tricks, and I know what happens to make them happen.
My question to you is not how do the tricks work?
Yeah.
Because, number one, I know that you're not going to tell me. And number two, there was this Radiolab podcast a couple of years ago where they talked about this mentalist trick, and Penn and Teller came on, and was like, I can tell you how the trick works, but you'll be really disappointed because whatever you're thinking of in your brain is far more complicated than what actually happens. And so they convinced him to tell them that. He cut that out of the podcast, but made it available if you were to go through several steps to get it, because they kept telling along the way, don't do it.
Don't do it, yeah.
Because you'll be disappointed. When you are watching this, now that you know how these tricks work, are you able to see it from the audience point of view, or are you always like, I know how this works? It's
not really anymore. No. Yeah, I always, because part of my job as the stage manager is to make sure that the show is going well. So if I see if I see something that is that like, oh, you flashed something there that the audience might have caught, and so I have to watch for that stuff. So I can't be. So
you
can't
had no
go
time
like,
to put yourself back into the audience and sort of like enjoy that moment.
Sadly, no, because I'm always looking for the thing that would give it away to make sure that the audience doesn't see the thing that would give it away.
If you see another magic show, do you see those things?
I haven't seen another magic show.
Has this show ruined you for other magic?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, because there's still a lot of stuff that and even some of Eric's sleight of hand card trick stuff, I don't necessarily know how he does a lot of the card tricks anyway. I don't, and hopefully, and I try not to learn, because I really like to not know.
Yeah.
If there's something I have to be watching for, then obviously I have to learn. But no, I don't think. I think it's repetition, right? Like, I used to usher as well. I ushered at the Hummingbird Center, and we had David Copperfield in. Okay. And the first time I saw the show, I was like, that was really cool. And the third time I saw the show, I knew how he did everything. Right. Because I'd seen it 3 times and I figured it out.
Well, because for a magician, I actually, there was a guy at Hamilton Fringe this year who did card tricks, and it was really important for him. He always said that you can never do a trick more than 3 times for somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if there's people in the, because he would do tricks when we were sitting around, and so he would always never do the same trick for the people who were in the group.
Yeah.
Because it was important for him to retain it. So,
Yeah.
I guess it's true. If you do see it three times, you will exactly know how it works.
Yeah. So it's and then it sort of loses its joy. I mean, David Copperfield, it's different.
But
he's really more about smoke and mirrors than anything else.
I mean, once you get to a certain size of the magic trick, I think it is always just
I really prefer small magic. I like table magic way better than the big stuff. Like I think sleight of hand is when sleight of hand is done well, it's amazing. Because if you can't see it, if somebody's doing something right in front of your face and you can't see it, it's awesome and super frustrating.
I think that's the thing is having watched Everton, who was up from Brazil this summer, is watching him sit at a table with people and blow their fucking minds every time as he would just do these simple things and nobody can figure out how he's doing it, but the way that he does it is, showing you the card, all this stuff, and you blow people's minds with small magic, and I think you don't with the big stuff.
Yeah, totally.
The big stuff is all flash.
Yeah, but people are so used to special effects. Yeah. Like that's not. It's not. The first time somebody made a big thing disappear, it was probably really exciting. But now, like, with CGI and movies and green screens and all that, like people assume that there's, deception.
I think, now we're going to start diverging a little bit like crazy again. But the series, the Now You See Me and Now You See Me Too are these movies where I wish they'd just done stuff that could be done with, like, magic.
Yeah.
Instead of doing CGI shit in there to be stuff that you could never do with magic. So instead of, like, bringing a consultant to figure out how the trick would work, they we're just going to throw in some CG.
Yeah.
In which case, it not only is a terrible cheat, but also sort of, like, ruins what could have been craft for the trick, right? To make it, like, something that a magician could have actually done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is sort of like, again, when you can do it in a movie, it becomes this thing that is impossible because now it's CG. And now when it's on the stage, what are people thinking now when they see a magic trick on the stage?
Yeah.
Do they think it's CG or do they think?
I don't know.
What people are thinking.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They won't be thinking that in the Red Sandcastle.
I'm sure that they will not.
Be anything.
Well, the Red Sandcastle.
Like I said, we don't have the tech to do that.
The Red Sandcastle is also small enough that it has. You can be intimate in a way that you can't with a lot of spaces in this city.
Yeah.
And I find that even at the storefront theater feels bigger than the Red Sandcastle, which is a great space for really an intimate show that really makes you feel like you're part of it.
For sure.
So, the Eldritch theater shows, have they always been produced at the Red Sandcastle?
That's a good question. Since I have been with Eldritch, yes, but I don't know what happened before that. So,
do you know what is there something you as a stage manager can see that the Red Sandcastle gives to these shows that another space would not?
There's a bunch of things. Again, the intimacy is great. It's really important for I feel like for the puppets and for the magic. I think Rosemary's really lovely in that she'll let us like transform the entire space. So we can take over. When we did Frankenstein's Boy a couple of years ago, we Melanie made the whole room was the actors were in the show as opposed to just watching the show, right? Because you don't have a choice because it's so small.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're in the show anyway. So you may as well. So the audience risers were designed, and I was wearing a costume because I'm so visible, and so it just becomes really much more immersive, and I think that's really helpful for a show like for shows like Eric's. There's that, and there's an element of rundownness that makes things a little bit creepy, and it's easy to make things creepy. I wouldn't say that the space itself is creepy; it's not, but it's easy to make things feel creepy when there's water stains on the ceiling.
A lot of theaters are creepy if you put them in the red. Like you
Fair
turn
enough.
if you turn on all the stage lights, turn on all the lights.
Yeah.
Most theaters are creepy in the red.
Yeah.
I mean, Red Sandcastle also has that. I mean, the neighborhood is so in transition that Leslieville is like there's like some high-end restaurants and there's like a fish and chips stop and there's like a rundown garage across the street. It's such an eclectic area that has got to.
Jim's Western is closing. It makes me want.
Closed. I think it closed on August long weekend.
That's so sad.
I know. No, I know. And that was like the perfect spot to go before a Sunday matinee, right? And now there's no sit-down spot where you can do that.
It's upsetting.
It is upsetting because it was a great little spot. It's always rashers.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Way more expensive.
Well, yeah.
If I'm gonna just go get lunch, I'm gonna go to the Pumps and get a sandwich because the sandwich is over there.
Yeah. In terms of, I mean, just to get back to just to you, we talked a little bit about when you found stage management. Mm-hmm. You were somebody who obviously had been exposed to theater at some point in their young life and decided that was the thing they wanted to do, whatever form that was going to take. Mm-hmm. When was it that theater became a thing that you knew you were going to do?
I honestly think, and it's such a cliche and it's so silly, but my parents took me to see the Phantom of the Opera when I was 11. And I really fell in love with singing before I knew sort of, but I was like, oh, that thing that girl is doing, I could do that. I want to do that. Can I do that? Yeah. And so that sort of, like the next year I was enrolled in singing lessons and stuff like that because my parents really nurtured it. And I was a very shy, nerdy kid, and so I think they were looking for ways to get me out of my shell too. But it was that early on, I think. And I didn't see a lot of theater. I grew up in Ottawa, and there's not a lot of theater in Ottawa, so we saw whatever came through the NAC if we could afford it. Yeah. And that was pretty much it. But I remember in high school, like we went on trips to Stratford and all that stuff, so there was all... It's just, but I just, anytime I saw theater, I was excited to see it. I wanted to see it. If you had given little Sandy an option between a movie and a play, I would have always chosen the play. Yeah. So it's just something that...
It's interesting that you said this is such a cliche, but I went to the Phantom of the Opera. What's interesting is that I think everybody thinks that their way of coming to the theater is a cliche, but every single person that I've talked to, and I've done in the 40s of interviews so far, everybody's story is so unique of how they found theater that there are no cliches, which is interesting.
So. Yeah.
In terms of like, do you know what it was? Like, you just suddenly identified with that main character.
Yeah, and I mean, even before that, when I was a kid, before I really knew theater, I always acted out my books. Okay. I would, like, when I was like 6 or whatever, I would be up in my room. Right. I loved to read, and I loved to act out the stories, and that was always, my sister and I memorized Alice in Wonderland, the Disney version of Alice in Wonderland, and she would play Alice and I would play everyone else, and we would like perform it for nobody, just for ourselves. But I was always I liked games where I got to role play, so that was...
There's a certain, because there are people who like, when they are younger, they gravitate toward theater, and then at a certain point, they either decide that it's not for them, or somebody convinces them that it's not for them. But then there's this very small group of people who decide and figure out that it's a thing they can do to make a living, or it's a thing they want to do with their life. Do you remember at what point you figured out or realized that was the thing that you were going to make your life's work?
No, I don't remember. I remember a friend in high school doing the very classic, how are you going to make a living question. I remember as early as 15 or 16 being very defensive about that question. So obviously I knew before that.
And so you should be, because it's those questions that convince people not to pursue a life in the arts.
For sure. And I still, of course, we all still get that question. Yeah, but what's your real job? So I don't remember making a decision. I don't remember. Maybe it comes down to my parents being really supportive, but I don't remember not thinking it was an option.
So there was never a moment where you thought to yourself that there was another option?
No, I've never thought of anything else. I don't remember ever wanting to be anything else when I grew up. Except when I was very, very small. Probably I went through like a doctor, firefighter phase. We all go through the I'm going to be a doctor, fireman, policeman. Yeah, ballerina, whatever.
I I know exactly what you mean, because I think that there was never, for me, and I think for a lot of people that I speak to, there have been a couple of people that I've spoken to, they were going to go academic, and then all of a sudden they went theater.
Yeah.
But very few people that I've spoken to have ever been anything other than what their career in theater is.
Yeah.
Like, once that thing takes hold, it's hard.
Yeah.
If you end up in something else, it's because you fell into it. It was never something you meant to do.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, I'm actually now starting to think about what my second career is going to be. That's something that, I started thinking about around, I think probably it coincided with the turning 30 meltdown. And so I'm giving that some thought about, like, if I were to go back to school, what would I study? And it's hard to come up with something.
Do you mind if I ask about why that's coming up for you? Is there something that's making you think you can't keep doing this?
I feel like I wouldn't want to do this job and raise a family. I know lots of people do. Mm-hmm. I know there's lots and lots of people who do, and they do it successfully, and that's wonderful for them. I really feel like I would have a very hard time with never being home to tuck the kids into bed. Mm-hmm. Like, it would be very, very challenging. Okay. Not that I have any immediate prospects of having a family, but like it's something that I think, and I get tired, and I have been saying for the past maybe 5-6 years that I have 5 more years of this job in me. And I say it every year. So I may still have 20 years of this job in me, but one day it's going to be true.
Do you still love it?
I do. I love it some years and some shows more than others. And I'm when I don't love it, now I really don't love it. Like, there were times when I used to get frustrated, and I used to go, oh God, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my job. But I didn't mean it. I love my job. But sometimes now, when I say I hate my job, I mean it. And it really depends on the contract. It really depends on the show and the people I'm working with and all of that stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot of times where every once in a while I go, like, I'm getting paid nothing to put up with your garbage. Like,
I think, as somebody who works a day job, I think that's, and I've worked a day job for several years, many years of my life. I actually think that's part of the job, the work cycle.
Maybe.
That at a certain point, you find yourself wondering if it's the thing that you want to do, and you go through sometimes long periods of time, sometimes short periods of time, of legitimately hating what you do.
Yeah.
And trying to find a way to keep doing it and figuring out if you should leave or not.
Yeah.
I do think that's part of the work cycle. But I do think that you don't know, like, sometimes when you think you hate your job, it's not the job that you hate, it's some aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, like, in the last year, I've come back around to loving my job again. Like, I was getting, last year, I was getting really, really serious, and, like, having conversations with my dad about how would I finance going back to school and all of that stuff, having, like, getting really, really seriously thinking about it. And then I did, like a string of 3 or 4 very meaningful, very, very enjoyable contracts, and went, oh no, I do love this. I do like doing this. So it's sort of, it was, and
one of the interesting things that's been happening lately is I've been talking to people of varying generations in the theater, whether they are my age in their 40s, or whether they're just coming out of theater school, or whether they've been in for like 10 years or something like that. And there's a big difference in terms of the way that people look at the work. When I was in theater school, we were taught that your career is going to be audition, get the job, finish the job, audition, get the job, finish the job, audition, get the job. And that was going to be your whole career. And or maybe you'd end up in Stratford for one and have a long contract, you'd be doing that sort of thing, but your life was going to be this. And at no time did anybody talk about self-production.
Okay. Wow, York was all about self-production.
Well, and a lot of theater schools have had to start talking about it because it's become such a big part of a career. And there are people who've made that transition into that from my quote-unquote generation of theater school people, but then it's become more and more until now I know York has this devised work, like all about creating your own work, sort of things like that. The difference, I think, and what I think might be, so as a performer and a creator, I can come in and I can be like, I'm going to create a show, and I do it. a stage manager tends to go from contract to contract to contract and is not involved in that part of the production.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe part of, and you can call bullshit on me at any time, that maybe part of the ebb and flow of your love of the job is because the job you are reliant on somebody else to make the work?
That's yes, I had never thought about it that way, but you're probably not wrong. Yeah, because that's the thing, is that because I don't get. Sometimes it's a blessing to not have any creative input into the show. Sometimes it's painful to not have any creative input into the show.
Yeah.
And actually, it was a year and a half ago. I did a workshop. I never do workshops. I never get hired to do workshops. And I was working with Cahoots Theatre, and they were doing a show that had 2 deaf actors in it. We just produced it this past spring. The show's called Ultrasound. And we were workshopping the script, and it was one of the first times that I just wasn't afraid to open my mouth. I always feel awkward when I make a suggestion about something, because that's not my place. I should shut up. And I gravitate towards directors who are more permissive of that from their stage manager. I don't work well with directors who think that the stage manager should be seen and not heard. Because I'm vocal. So those directors don't want to work with me anyway. But this was the first time that I asked a question that was so insightful that they gave me a sticker. And it was the greatest. I was like, I wanted so much to be involved in script development, to the point where I was like, should I have been a dramaturg? That's where I sort of had that. I had a little crisis of, oh my god, I should have been a dramaturg. Not that I would have gotten any more work than I do now, but
just less.
Probably less, probably significantly less. But because I really enjoyed that process, the script development process, and being involved in that and those discussions. I love table work. Most stage managers hate table work, but I love it. I love sitting and talking about character, and I think because I came at it from the acting side.
Yeah.
I feel like there are there's sort of 2 camps of stage management. There's actor stage managers, and there's administrative stage managers, and my paperwork sucks, but I have all the soft skills.
I'm really good at, as somebody who's worked with various kinds of stage managers, the kind that the actor likes is the actor stage manager.
Yeah, of course.
Because the actor stage manager not just understands the actor, but also probably a little better at calling bullshit on the actor than the
sure. And usually, this is my other bias slant towards this is when I interview apprentices. Every once in a while, I get to choose my own apprentice, and it's great. And I only have one question in the interview, and the question is, what's the most important quality for a stage manager to have? And there is a right answer, and it is a sense of humor. So if they say organization, I'm like, oh, fuck off. Oh, am I allowed to swear in your podcast?
I've been swearing on the stage.
I don't even notice when other people do it.
The beauty of a podcast is that the CRTC gets to say nothing, and so you can say fuck this shit, whatever you want to say, as much as you want to say.
That's good.
I usually try to give the hint early on by dropping an F-bomb.
I don't even blink when other people swear, and I'm just like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that.
It's interesting because a workshop has a tendency to be a little bit more freeform than a rehearsal does. I guess a rehearsal requires a little bit more on the administrative side from the stage manager in a workshop.
Yeah.
But it also requires that everybody in the workshop room is encouraging everyone who's in the room to converse, not just actor and director.
Yeah.
And really, a workshop can go either way.
Yeah.
But sometimes what I think an actor stage manager is the right kind of stage manager for this kind of thing, because they will see things that the director who's looking at it and the actor who's looking at it don't, because they're actually the audience for the show.
Yeah,
I suppose. At a certain point. And so it's very helpful to have that sort of thing in the room.
Yeah, and I really like stories, and I'm a voracious reader. I've been reading my whole life, so I just sort of, a well-constructed story is very obvious to me, and plot holes and all of that stuff is also very obvious to me. So it's really easy to notice that stuff and be like, wait a second, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I always.
Yeah. You can always do dramaturgy on the side.
I could.
Because people need that too.
I suppose. I don't know how to get into that, and I feel like there's some training that I'm missing or something.
You know, the thing is that I think that a lot of times we talk a lot about training, and we act as though you need the training to do the thing. Now, as an actor, I am thankful for every moment that I had when I was in theater school, even though at the time I was not. Now I am. Now I would go back and do it again, but it would be cheating because I know what I want to get out of it.
Yeah.
But I think that there are certain things that you can only learn by doing.
Yeah.
Because I think you could take writing classes out the wazoo and you will not learn a damn thing from the class until you start actually doing the thing. And I think that producing is similar, producing theater is similar, and dramaturgy may be the same thing. Because if you have insight, working, like doing dramaturgy for a fringe show is not necessarily like it's a good spot to get your feet wet.
Fair enough.
You know, we're just talking here. We're just talking. So, what is the new Eldritch show? I don't remember.
The show is called The Harrowing of Brimstone McReedy.
The Harrowing of Brimstone McReedy. Is there anything you could say about that show?
What can I say about that show? It's your typical boy goes to the Klondike to become a prospector, boy meets girl, boy sells his soul to the devil.
Okay,
yeah, it's an old-fashioned story.
An old-fashioned story, story.
Yeah.
And it's puppet.
It's puppets
and magic
and horror. Yeah. Because we haven't started rehearsals yet, I don't have too much inside scoop for you.
Of course, but I mean, that's opening in October.
October 27th. Yes.
Okay. Just in time for Halloween.
Exactly
when you want.
Yes.
Exactly when you want magic puppet horror theater.
It's like we planned it. Yeah.
It is like you planned it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Can we find you online anywhere? Do you have Twitter? Do you have
me or Eldritch? Me.
You.
Oh
Eldritch,
God.
the Eldritch stuff I'm going to post anyway.
I have a very, very minimal internet presence.
Mm.
I do have a Twitter handle, and I don't even remember what it is because it's been that long since I've used it. So I don't know that you can find me online. My name is Sandi Becker, and if you Google me, I am on the first page of Google.
Somewhere
things.
in that first page.
Yeah, I think I might now be the first thing that comes up.
No any website? No?
I don't have my own website.
All right. I mean, it's unusual for a stage manager to have a website.
Yeah. Why would I?
Of course. But yeah. So maybe we can get I would be happy to post your Twitter handle if you're willing to share that.
I can send it to you, but I literally haven't tweeted in 2 years. So I don't know that it will be interesting to anyone.
Maybe it won't be, but we can look back as an archive of the tweets that you have made.
Indeed.
It will be fascinating.
Indeed.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. I had a great time.